And now I welcome Marc Middleton with a message for the children.
Welcome back to another Time with Children segment. Gather your kids in front of the screen, the young and the young at heart, for this is a very special message, very important message that God really nudged me to talk about today. So, throughout the Lenten season, we've talked about the numbers of Lent. We've talked about the number 40. We've talked about the number 3. We've talked about the number 2. This week, we're going to talk about the number 6, which represents human weakness. So instead of showing you how 6 is used in the Bible, which there are examples of it, I'm going to focus on our opening hymn for this week, which is called "O Sacred Head, Now Wounded." And this is based on a passage that takes place slightly earlier than our sermon text will take. In Mark 15, 16 through 20, we learn about the mockery, the bullying, and the torture that Jesus had to go through. Pilate has just released Barabbas at this point and sent Jesus away to be crucified. And in the story relating to the hymn, he was mocked in 6 different ways. They dressed him in a purple robe, which purple was the traditional color of royalty, so they were mocking him as this king that people were claiming him to be. They twisted together a crown of thorns and put it on him, which represented the mockery of an actual crown. They saluted him to mock his coronation. They struck his head with a stick to imitate his scepter. They spit on him and they knelt before him to honor him. These soldiers were making fun of Jesus because Jesus was known as the King of the Jews, which would later be the inscription of what he did wrong while he was hanging on the cross. But they didn't believe it. And because of that, they decided to bully Jesus for being who he was. Now, my question to you is, how many of you have ever gone through a situation like that, where you were bullied for being you? Now, I know I know it's not to the extent of how Jesus did, but again, how many of you have just been bullied for being who you are? And I know it's a tough question, and this isn't a typical Marc fun lesson. And you're right. As I mentioned, God shared it with me to share with you today. And we often feel that we are the only ones that go through the journey we're going through, whether it's dealing with anxiety, when it's dealing with stress, when it's dealing with depression, bullying, and more. And we often feel alone in that journey because no one understands what we're dealing with. And you're right. You are the one that experiences your own journey. I can't experience that for you. I can try to understand your journey by what you're willing to share, but I can't experience what you experience. What I can do is share what I went through if it helps, and offer ideas or ways to help you manage and or overcome what you're dealing with, or at the very least, just walk with you on your journey. I can do that, but for me to do that, for me to share and talk about my own experiences, I had to go through those weaknesses to understand that. And Jesus went through those same weaknesses too. Jesus went through this as a human, even though he was fully God. Now, we can't experience what Jesus went through, which I don't think any of us really want to when we look at the mockery and the bullying that I talked about earlier. We can try to understand what he experienced, and we discuss different parts of this journey through the first 4 Sundays of Lent. But Jesus goes through the same things that we all go through, that you might have went through, and you may not know it. Do you deal with anxiety? Jesus was anxious while he was in the garden praying to God to not go through this. Bullying? Go back and read the scripture I mentioned earlier. Jesus went through all these things. And if you're going through things like this, I really encourage you to talk to God. I encourage you to open up to God about all that stuff you're dealing with, because on the other side of that conversation is one who sympathizes, is one who understands, and is one who strengthens. He will guide you through this. We all go through weaknesses of some kind, even Jesus. But with Jesus, we gain strength. Jesus also put people in our paths that have gone through the same things we're dealing with. We may feel scared to reach out to the people in our lives because we fear being judged or made fun of or understood. And I hope I can also encourage you to pray to Jesus, to ask him for the courage to reach out. Not necessarily ask for the people to come to you, but for you to reach out to others, for you to gain the strength and courage to reach out to others so that you can open up comfortably and safely. Could be your parents, different family members, friends, Pastor Kathy, myself, or just overall other trusting people in your life. And I pray that you're going to feel God's guidance in whomever he leads you towards, and that whomever he leads you toward will love you, will understand you, will be there with you, and will walk with you. I'm going to close today's message with one of my favorite verses in the Bible. It's from the book of Philippians, written by Paul, who dealt with his fair share of weaknesses over the course of his ministry. And it says this, it's Philippians 4:13. I can endure all these things through the power of the one who gives me strength. May God strengthen you when you feel weak this week. And I will see you next week for maybe a little more lighthearted Time with Children's message. We'll see you then.